so foolish. He
Take my
had
coat
cancer,
off here.
huh?
I'm going to take my coat off here.
Yeah, I keep it kind of warm.
No, that's fine.
And he tried to cure it once in Mexico.
I know. I remember when he went down there.
And I was down to see him, and I had cancer in on my bowels, and I had it taken out. And what they detected it was quite small.
Yeah.
And so that's been my gosh for quite a while. Well, it was before Clay was so long. And so I went down to Clay and said, "What's the matter? What did you do? Did you get cancer?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, I've had that done." And he said, well, began gathering up books on food reading. I said, "Clay, mine's gone. It's been cut out a year ago, and there's no sign of any return." And I said, "I don't believe in that eating disease." Oh, he was
really, when he came back, he was really sold on it all.
And he was sold on, he was handing me out a stack of books like that, tell him what to eat.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, I don't see any point in that because mine's gone." And I'm taking another job on it. But I couldn't imagine a man that intelligent.
Well, desperate, I imagine, would be one, I guess. I don't know.
But
I
I
thought
think
it was
where
odd,
he
too.
had his was a lot harder. It
Yeah.
was in his sexual area, and I think that's a lot harder to cut out.
And it spread all,
Oh, it did.
all around and everything.
And well, when I went down, it didn't seem to be, but he was.
The last time I saw him, I went to his house there up on the Forsyth,
Yeah.
And he was starting to look pretty bad then. I was kind of shocked at him to see him because he lost a lot of weight in his hair and so much and everything.
Well, he looked perfect.
And he was so pale when I saw him, and he also seemed to have a lot of lesions on him or something. I don't know.
Well, when I saw none of that had
And then
happened.
it wasn't long after that, though, that he had to go to the hospital. And well, I think who's running it now?
Well, she wrote me and wanted me to write about the products they were advertising, and I wrote them that I don't use that sort of thing.
No.
And anyway, I've got
There's what I mean by a senior moment. What's her name? I know her as well as anybody.
The woman down
Yeah.
I have no idea. I
I
cannot
do, and I can't
remember
think.
names.
Anyway.
But what I do now is, you may have noticed, there's some books around.
Yeah.
I review books for for a bookstore on Benstone. And when Barnes and Noble came in, one of the started to shut them down because they were taking it away. And they said to my daughter, "Would your mother review?" I had written something about one of their books. And they had put it up on the wall, and people began to think, "I want that book, I want that book." And so they said, "Would she review books for us, just for the books?" And oh gosh, I have books and globes and all sorts of things. And I said, yes, I would. I mean to sell some of them. So Nancy
Is this Barnes and Noble? Barnes and Noble you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about the other one.
Country Club?
Well, some across there was a whole batch of them. There's only one or two left.
Yeah, I can't remember. I know who you
Let's see. I guess you.
But you get free books, don't you?
Oh my God!
I started saying, man, what a library
I
you're
have sold a few, and they're all these, and then I got a globe, and I don't know what all, and just anything I ask for is out there, I get, because they say, well, they were assigned to be closed, and then they've got Fern's table, and on that are the books that I review. And,
well, that's nice.
And the reviews.
Yeah.
And so the people come in, and what's your firm on reviewing this week? If I don't like it, I don't review
Barbara
it.
Wehrman. Barbara Wehrman.
Oh.
That's who I was trying to think of. All right, man. Well,
well, there were 5 of those shops in town. Now there's just 3. But mine is one of them. And it was the one that was scheduled to go first because they figured Barnes and Noble would just blow them out of the water.
Yeah.
And I've been in Barnes and Noble because my nephew gave us all the Christmas certificates down there. And it's about, I don't think I've been in the mail the other one, but it's about twice as big as any other bookstore.
Yeah, they always have a crowd.
Well, it wasn't all
It's
that.
mainly for that, well, kind of a little coffee shop, and then of course they have chairs around where people can sit and read, you know.
Yeah.
It's
Well, I just wanted to cash out my certificate and left at that, and I thought they were fairly high. Of course, I haven't bought them.
I started to say you wouldn't. Well, they're so expensive anymore. I haven't either. Well, let me tell you what this all is about here. Years ago, right after Vance died, I gave quite a few talks because of my association with him on the bibliography, you know, and everything. And then having lived here all my life, you know, I remembered so many of the people that he knew and everything. Well, then what I've been doing the last interim here, 20 years or so, is this music, which I've always done, you know, the fiddle music and just Ozarks music and everything.
Yeah.
And I've been working with SMS because they've actually gotten interested in it.
My
Finally.
nephew is head of the mathematics department out there, Dr. John Nance. He writes that column about astronomy.
Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, I just read it this morning.
He's my nephew.
Well, I didn't know that. But anyway,
and so he does a lot of traveling.
Yeah.
And
so I've started going back through everything, you know, all the books I have, and Cochrane's book too, and just my correspondence. I've got over 100 letters from him, you know. Plus I got 50 hours of tape that I did when we were working. I haven't gotten into that yet. Most of it's going to be me yakking, which I don't like to hear. But I've gotten interested in really getting back into it again because he's almost non-existent now to people because nobody's from here anymore, Fern.
Yeah.
The Chamber of Commerce did a survey last year, and I've double-checked this because my wife kept saying, oh, that can't be, and other people with Jim Anderson, who's the president of the Chamber of Commerce. In southwest Missouri, and I'm sure northwest Arkansas is the same, 30%, which is almost 1 out of 3, have lived here 5 years or less.
Oh, heaven.
Well, I believe it. I don't see anybody I know anymore unless go to a funeral or...
There used to be people who were known elsewhere. There was Vance Randolph, and he lived at Pineville for a while. Then he lived in Galena. Finally, he died in West Arkansas. Yeah. And then there was George Milburn bought his house at Pineville, and he lived there for a while. I was down there a couple of times. And, of course, there was Stewart Short.
Oh, yeah.
You know, my daughter works for the state, and that was when she was over at this other place. They've got them stuck under down over here off of, what is that street that goes up and down there? Kansas, I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, it's kind of a peculiar place, but she's still working for it. But anyway, Dewey came in to see Bill Short, his nephew. And Nancy thought he was somebody who'd come in to apply for aid. He said she'd heard so much about it. He was this little shriveled up man, looking kind of shabby. Is he still alive doing?
Oh, no. He died, oh, gosh.
I'd say
at least 10 years ago, or maybe a little more.
I wonder who preached his funeral. Because he was a great hat for preaching.
Yeah, well, I went to Bass's funeral, and he preached it. Of course, he was...
Bessie?
Yeah.
Well, was that the one where...
That was the oldest girl,
jumped up and said, she isn't really dead, and she jumped, and her sister jumped up and said, that's what I keep telling you, that's what I keep telling you.
See, Fanny just, now, they're all gone. Let's see, Fanny was about the last, and of course Teddy, Theodore's son, Teddy's quite a character. Of course, Teddy has died too, see.
Oh, he has?
Yeah, about 3 or 4 years ago.
He worked with Nancy down at the...
Yeah. They did a good, of course, when he bought the house,
he burned the house down, didn't he?
Oh, I never have heard exactly what happened there.
Yeah, he was a heavy drinker and a heavy smoker.
Well, the thing is, you were in that house a lot.
Everybody said he was going to burn the house down. And the next thing he had burned down.
You've been in that house, haven't you?
I was in the old house.
That's what I mean, yeah. Well, you remember, you went in a little foyer here, and then the living room was here. Well, the last time I was in the house, it was one of the last couple of times I was there. It's when Fanny was back.
Yeah.
And Teddy had it then, and on the top, on the ceiling, was a big black circle with different colors going in. He was off in the occult.
Oh,
now, when they burnt, the house burned, and the top half, the first top 2 floors really burned out. But they did a good job and made a 1-story house out of it. But I went down there to his sale, and he had a woman, kind of a common law, or just a friend now they call him, you know, everybody living there, and that's who got the stuff, I think, who got his place. And everything in the house was black.
Oh,
everything was black. The ceiling, the walls, the carpet.
He painted it.
Yeah, the kitchen was black. The stove and the ice box. Oh yeah, he was a smart guy, loaded with money. Because he got so much money from his dad, you know.
Oh yeah.
I used to see him downtown.
Well, there was somebody else he got money from, but I forgot.
Well, I used to see. I'd eat down at a little restaurant. He worked at the.
He worked same place my
okay, in the old Pennies.
Well, it was the welfare.
Yeah, welfare. And I used to see him.
And so when Dewey came in, and Hetty had said for Nancy to make him at home, and she thought he'd come in about the welfare and said, "You're all shriveled up and kind of shabby looking." But when while they were in the army, they were talking about sending him over to Japan. And I thought, well, he served his time, but I wrote to it, and I said, I know where the body's buried. I want Ralph to make transfers to the hospital in Springfield. By golly, Ralph was transferred to the hospital. Because he was head of something about the Army. I don't know.
Well, yeah, he was secretary. He was head of the Armed Forces, the Congressional Committee.
Yeah.
For the Armed Forces.
Anyway,
yeah. He was in this. I went in the room in Washington and had his big portrait on the wall there.
I saw the letter he wrote and said it would be a personal favor to him if
well, tell me again, and I've heard this, but I've forgotten it now. How did you get involved with Vance? How did you meet him? And
I had read his book. And then I was down there.
But the Ozarks and the Ozark Mountain folks, is that?
Mildred Krieger and I were working on the old Springfield Press, the one that Jewel and Bixby went together. And the merchants all wanted to come in because Bixby had raised the advertising rates. Well, when he came in, there wasn't enough advertising to do papers. So they went together. And who lost their project? Bixby said he kept all of his employees. We were just put out the door. And so, but anyway, before that happened, another reporter and I went. There was a car took the papers around to different places, and some of them wanted to go in it, and around that, and so we could get a ride down there and back. And I had heard about it, and I thought that would be an interesting place to go. And so we went down to, we called and reserved a place and went down on the paper route and came back on the paper route as far as that was concerned. And I had heard of Vance's book, but I'm not sure that I had read it. I think I just read the review. But anyway, we were staying at the in a little cabin right around the corner from what was that woman?
Fanny Mathis.
Huh?
Mathis?
Yeah, I always called her, everybody called her Aunt.
Yeah.
And, but anyway, I looked up and he was getting ready to go to leave, and they had his pot. So I batted up there with just in my bathing suit, no pencil or anything. And I was asking Nancy the question. I wanted to do an interview with him about his work. He said, well, that was the first time he'd ever been interviewed by a girl in a bathing suit. And I said, not only that, but the girl's going to have to ask you for paper and pencil. And so that's what I wrote. And that was the beginning of my knowing him when he came back. Why, I May McCord that took me down once to his wife down in Galena. She was chummy with the short. But anyway, he suggested that I write a book, so I wrote my first juvenile. And I tell you though, if I didn't have bad luck with the book, I had one ready to go. And Mama was from the area. Mama brought up. She said, Farmer Susan Brown and typed and all ready to go. She said, I think read this, I think it's real good. And I said, I've been cheered by everybody in the countryside. The first one was Sold to Canuck.
The first was what?
The first book was Sold to Canuck. And Vance insisted on having his name stuck on them, but some of them, but he never wrote a single word of it. But anyway, I had a friend, Johnny Johnson, who was state editor of Journal Post, and he called a friend who was had the book department in the big store there, and she ordered 1,000 copies. And then I said they didn't have them. He didn't know when they would have them. And so they kept writing, and he never did sell any of them. Till finally he wrote me and said, well, they don't seem to be selling. He said, I'll either sell you the type or I'll pay you $100 for your rights to it. Well, what would I do with the type?
Yeah.
And so I took the money. And then I thought, well, next time I'm going to have an agent. So I joined the author circle, and I asked them to recommend me an agent. And they did, and I sold another book, Under Glass, and it sold like a house of fire.
Which one was this, the girl? Which one was this that sold?
Right over here.
Oh, get up there. Oh.
This one. Oh, I think this one. I wrote this one and this one and this one.
Yeah.
And
Under Glass.
yeah, Under Glass was the one.
Girl Scouts and Oats, I have this.
This
Yeah,
one.
and I have this.
And this one sold.
That I don't
That
have,
was the
yeah.
one that really sold. And so I could think, okay, well, I get some money. Because that was one I had to agent. Oh, that one I could give
Yeah.
into my hand. And so I got it. And so finally I wrote that long agreement.
1937.
And so they said, oh, it sold well. It sold the 40 state reading circles to the high school. For the school.
Yeah.
But it turned out that the agent, and P.G.I. was not alone. P.G.I. would have felt worse if it had been just me, but he took P.G. Woodhouse for $10,000, and he got all of my royalties.
Now this was the
Under Glass.
Under Glass.
So I thought, that's it. I'm going into the flower business, because we had the greenhouse, and we were needing another designer. So I thought, okay, I like flowers. So I wrote for the Florist magazine, but I wrote no more books. I didn't even send out the farm book. I wish now I had, and sent it out myself, but I didn't know what to do. I don't like it. When I sent it out myself, I got cheated. When I sent it out for her agent, I got it cheated. And you see, this was an agent recommended by the Authors Guild, which I had joined because I thought they'd know.
Well, did Vance act as an agent for you sometimes, or just a go-between, wasn't he? Just more or less.
What he did chiefly was to claim credit for everything.
Yeah.
But no, he ever acted as an agent for it. But the thing that I got the biggest kick out of was I wrote a piece called "Yes, I'm a Hillbilly" for Esquire.
I have a copy of it. I have a copy of it.
I wrote that was my grandmother was Petunia Gish, but we called her Tony. And she never wanted to be forgotten. Well, she won't be. And I wrote under the name of Anthony Gish. They paid me $125 for it. At Christmas, they sent me a watch and $5. And so I took the watch and went in. I was going up to Chicago to visit a friend of mine, and I walked in there and said, "I'm Anthony Gish." I married myself. They wrote and asked me for my biography, and I married myself. And I had been dating Lon Martin, and people called her, "Do you know Nancy was married?" And so he called and he said, "What's this?" I said, "Oh, they wrote and asked." I hadn't thought of it. Nobody asked for me for a biography before. All I'd had before was that smart alecky column said Nancy Nance was his favorite thing, because it seemed that was a term they used then for fancy pants young men. And so I dropped the Nancy Nance and went to Nancy Clemens, and then became an honorary member of the Mark Twain Society for the Clemens, and for some reason Eugene Field Society. I don't know why that got in all that. That's all in the box up there, and I can't get up there to get it out. I'd like to see some of that stuff again. But Yes, I'm a Hillbilly. It was a pretty darn good thing. They paid me $100 like a shot and gave me a watch for Christmas. And then they took it very nicely when I went in, and they said, "Well, since we know you're a woman, we can't take you for a right to have you anymore for your pieces for the magazine, but we're starting a new magazine. So they bought 3 pieces about Kansas City for that one.
What was the new one? Do you remember the name of it?
I don't remember. It was Ken or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't last long.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether Esquire is now or not. But a lot of the magazines that I work for,
well, yeah, a lot of magazines are gone now.
Yeah, they're down the line.
Yeah.
I was in quite a batch of magazines, and 2 or 3 of my books have been put out in England.
You did the camp meeting murders.
Yeah.
Tell me again now. Now, which Leonard was one of the characters in there, wasn't it? Didn't you draw on some of the characters in?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they're all real
You told me
people.
this years ago, but see, I don't remember that.
They're all real people, and most of them are, as far as that's concerned. But of course, I gave them different names. And
Leonard was the bootlegger in the story, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
With the gang.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you know, of somebody who works at the prison down at Oklahoma City said, "You have a shining light down there, and in the prison." And I said, "How's that?" And he said, "Well, there was a couple of people from were talking about a girl named Nancy Nance, and how she was supposed to be Dewey's church girl." And this man spoke up and said, "No, she's not. I was sleeping right outside the window of her room when Dewey tried to get in, and I heard what she told him and how that door stayed locked."
You know, some other name and just reading through things, and I always, I'll tell you, there's another story. I went out about, 3 months ago, I guess, or 2 months ago, to see Mary Scott Hare. She's at the rest home out here,
Yeah.
Woodland Manor, where my dad was and everything. So she has a nice room. She appeared very mentally, and there. So I would sit there and talk to her, and she'd just kind of stare at me. And then occasionally she'd answer me a question, and then other times she'd just stare. Well, I thought, well, it's too bad. She's just not thinking, not able to think or anything. So I took a good picture of her, and I took her a tape. I have these Library of Congress recordings that the guy got them, and he made me copies. And on one of them is Ruth Scott playing the fiddle with Lillian playing the piano. So I made her a copy of that one. Well, I talked to her granddaughter a few days later.
Vance was always kind of smitten with Lillian.
Well, so was Dewey, I think, too, after. Oh. But anyway, I talked to her granddaughter a couple of days later and said, "Did she have her hearing machine on?" I said, "What?" She said, "Did you see that box that was next to her?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, she has to turn that on or she can't hear what you're saying." So I need to go. And then she wrote about me coming in her column. And, so she was okay. She just wasn't hearing what I was saying.
Who was that?
Mary Scott Hare.
Oh, yeah. I don't think
she's
I heard
96 or 7.
Who did she write for?
She still does for it's the Cassville paper, but I can't remember now.
Christian County Herald.
Yeah. And she still has her column. A guy gave me a copy where she had mentioned me coming out to visit. And I brought her the
when
tape.
I was on the paper, I had all sorts of jobs, and one of them was that I was district editor. I got all the country newspapers, and if there was a story in them that I thought needed following,
the days of those little community reporters is over with. Those were so colorful, and now they're all newcomers, and they don't write. But do you remember Lillian? Did you know Lillian?
Oh yes, beautiful.
I heard that's what I've heard. That she was. I've seen her picture in one of those volumes of the Ozark folk songs. But everybody said she was just a beautiful woman.
And why she married
Leonard?
Leonard, I never knew.
Well, they also said about her second husband. Why did she marry that guy? Because he
who was that?
Hume or I can't remember.
I thought she died early.
No, she was married to this fellow when she died. They moved to Alabama or something. I've heard the shorts talk about it. And they never did understand why she.
Well, anybody who'd been married to Leonard. Well, although Leonard was a pretty nice guy, outside of the fact that he believed in killing a few people. And,
everybody I know that knew Leonard, of course, a lot of them are gone now. Oh, Miss Hall, who worked in the courthouse, Tuffy Hall's wife, she said she'd sit up there on Saturdays and look out the window, and there he'd be buying clothes for these little hill children or giving them money to go to the movie.
He'd go coming to Springfield, he'd circle the square. And I remember I was down there one time. He said, "You want to go up to Springfield?" And I said, "No." "Well, thank God for that," he said. And then when I was getting ready to, because he said I got a car full, and when I was getting ready to write my first book, I wanted a little church, a certain kind of a little church.
Is that the Girl Scouts?
No, it's the Camp Meeting Murders.
Oh yeah, okay.
And
all right.
I wanted the camp meeting if I could find them, but I didn't think they had it. And so anyway, I said I don't know where to find them. And so I was staying up at Fanny's, and so she came up and she said, Leonard's boys are here for you. And I said, well, what for? So I went down, and they said, well, Leonard said you wanted to see some kind of country church for us to drive you around till you saw it. And that's the kind of person he was, and that's why he got away with murder.
Well, you know, when I started working with Vance, and when we call it pissing in the snow came out. Well, one time, of course, I'm close with the Shorts, knew the Short. My wife and Jay Frank's daughter are best friends. So years and years ago, I got involved with the Shorts, and we were down there lots of times, you know. And so I told Vance, I said, well, Vance, I'm going to see Dewey next week. He's coming home. I said, do you want to autograph? I had an extra copy. I said, do you want to autograph this? He said, well, I don't know, you know. He did, and when I gave it to Dewey, he said, well, that's nice. And then, of course, later on, I found out they weren't exactly friends, because both of them were sparking Lillian at the same time after Leonard was killed, you know. And I heard that was one big rivalry between them.
Oh, Vance was?
Yeah, Vance.
And I didn't know that.
That's what a couple of the Shorts told me that. I don't know if it's Fanny or... Wouldn't be Fanny, because I bet it was Helen Pauley.
Oh,
because Fanny would never say anything against the family, you know.
No.
But Helen,
Helen,
yeah. And I think it's Helen that told me about that.
She was the best looking one of the bunch, Helen.
Yeah, she was a lot of fun. She had a place right 2 blocks down from the Capitol. Is where because we stayed there a couple times. We went up to Washington, you know. Yeah, well, it was and of course, Vance wrote a story, the story of the Shorts. And of course, Lillian convinced him to destroy it. And he told me, he said, I wished I hadn't done that. And I do too, because that would have been because you know, each little community used to have these families that had power, you know. You're either with them or against them.
Of course, the murder in Camp Meeting Murders, there was not him, but there was a man in there who strongly, not the murderer, but another man who strongly resembled Leonard. But I liked Leonard, and when they had the trial, why, I wasn't working on the paper then. The paper, when they went through, why, Bixby kept his reporters, and Jules hit the dust. But one of the, whatever bailiffs called and said, why aren't you down there? I said, I'm not on the paper anymore. I'm not. I lost my job on the paper. He said, well, you can come down and visit your old friends, can't you, when court's in session? And I said, well, yes, but there's a peculiar situation about this. You're trying one of my old friends.
Yeah.
And I said, they'd wonder why I was down there watching Leonard being tried.
Yeah.
And I liked Bessie, and she was just a wonderful woman,
well,
I thought.
If you want to know why Dewey got elected so much, he was good too at remembering things, but Bessie always stood right next to him in that greeting line, and everybody came up, she'd say, now Dewey, this is Uncle so-and-so's great niece or something, make the connection, you know. And then, of course, I took Dewey one time out here to a big Republican function when Governor Connolly from Texas was here, and Gene Taylor was our congressman then. And it was at this big thing that was the Ramada then. They had an enormous meeting room. And it was a big meeting. It was pretty well filled. And from the time we got there till we got up to the front where Dewey was going to be sitting, it must have been 45 minutes because people would come up to him and they'd say, I'm so-and-so. And he'd say, oh, you're so-and-so's, you must be so-and-so's great-grandson. So, there's your politician. He knew, but they always told me that Bess stood there and really let him know who's who because she knew all of them, you know.
And she was awfully nice. I drove a train. I wrote a piece about it. I wrote for the Mountaineer then. I wrote a piece about it from think they wouldn't let me get on the passenger train. I had gone down there on the passenger train. They stopped letting me out, but they wouldn't stop to pick me up. And so they said, well, I said, well, I've got to get out of here. And I don't. There's nobody going to. And I had tried hitchhiking one time, and somebody had taken me to. I had a good chance ride, but I'd already promised these other people, another girl and I. We spent the night at the filling station. We got out, anyway, I forgot. Anyway, if I got out at Galena and took a picture of the crew, or I had somebody take a picture of the crew with me standing in the middle, and Bessie was there, and I said, Bessie, I need a bath. And have you got an empty room? She said, I'll make one for you. And but they said when one of her sisters died, she just wouldn't believe it. She had died there, and she just kept saying, she isn't dead. She isn't dead.
Well.
But she was one of the nice women I ever.
Well, they were undoubtedly really a colorful family, the whole family.
Yeah.
And then I know a lot of the others. I knew.
Now, Dewey really should have been taken out and shot at sunrise. Although he would do favors.
I don't know if there was anything to this, but this rumors. I always heard that Leonard took the heat for maybe some problems Dewey had done one time. Now, I don't know what they meant or anything.
I don't either. I thought that Leonard was all right, except that he was a bootlegger, and they said he killed a few people.
Then down when they tried to escape, they also didn't they kill the group that was trying to escape. I think they killed a guard or something like that too. Dewey told me about that. Dewey got to talk to people when he was drinking, which was a lot of the time, you know. And one night at Charles E. Dell's, that's Susie J. Frank's son-in-law at his house. This is years ago. And Dewey was talking. He got to talking about Leonard and his dad. And he took his dad down to see Leonard just before he died down there in the hospital. And said, people are always making jokes, he said, but he said, that really tore my dad up. Was that?
You know, I haven't been down to Galena for years. I went down once.
Nothing.
And
don't go.
It just made me sad.
Yeah.
All the people I knew, but except they got a library. And there's one little shelf there, and it had Vance's books in it.
Yeah.
And I think a little sign saying a gift.
But it's just a ghost town. If it wasn't the county seat, it wouldn't even be there.
And
you know.
I did a trial there. I think the first time I went to Galena, but they had the trial of a woman from Ava came and was put there on the change of venue. And Sam, what was his name? He was a prominent Springfield lawyer. And so he was trying her. In fact, she had 6 attorneys, and he was the head one. And they had that lawyer who was so funny. The one from, he would crack jokes. It was
from Galena or
no, County? He was from farther east. I forgotten his name now. My gosh, it's been over 60 years ago. But anyway, he was a good judge, but he could be funny on while he was up there. But anyway,
Moore, was it Judge Moore? He was from Ozarks originally.
No, he was from this guy was from
farther.
Over, he was from another county. Yeah. They brought him in on a change of venue. See, the whole thing was brought in on a change of venue from Douglas County. And Vance Chris, who did some freelance work for the St. Louis paper at that time, was outside the window when I was calling in my report to the paper, and he yelled and he said, "Who's Sam Ware?" Oh yeah, Sam Ware was the head.
Okay,
who's Sam Ware trying this time? You know, Sam was the head of the defense because she had money, and I said, who's Sam Ware trying? He always tried somebody besides his crime. I said, the dead man. I think Sam heard that, but he didn't pay attention to it.
Well, that was a colorful time. It really was. It was. I remember the tail end of it.
The town has changed so much. We used to get celebrities coming in here all the time.
Well, well, like I said, you know, the one in 3, 5 years or less now. Plus the fact it's not one town anymore. You know, there's the people live out by the mall and the square, as George,
well,
and then
I
over
think
here.
it's the fact too that about the planes. The planes
yeah,
go right straight through. It used to be they would be half of them would lay over for half an hour. And there was a peculiar thing, and I was grounding with the man. The old airport was out on Division Street.
Yeah, I remember that.
And so they'd call me when there was a celebrity coming in. Boy, I'll never forget the Sam Lambert trip. I got there was some gal he'd met was going to go up with him, and she couldn't do it, so she called me and asked me if I would. And I thought, well, that'll be a story, going up with Sam Lambert of Louis Stream Lambert. It almost was an obituary. But there was this man in 4-buckle uniform, overshoes and pants that looked like they were 20 years old, and who took out to a little wreck of an airplane, Sam Lambert's little sunflower. And he says, you'll have to hold the door shut. I thought, oh my God. And so we went up, and he said, well, you better have some stunts if you're going to write a story about this. And I said, I guess so. And I had on the one thing and the door was the other, and we were loop to loop and this, that, and the other. We got back, and when I went in, the manager of the airport said, "Man, said you gone crazy?" I said, "I think so." He said, "Don't you know that man has been banned at Lambert Field, named after his family?"
Yeah.
I said, "No, why didn't somebody tell me before I got in there? I knew I had to hold the door of the, of the thing shut, but I didn't know." And the next day, there's these teletype things, and when it makes a certain kind of a tinkle, 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 it means that this is the story coming through for it's administered to your town. And so McMurtry motions for me to come up and said, "I want you to see this." Sam Lambert had crashed. That was the very next day. Had crashed over in Illinois. They didn't find enough of Sam to bury him, and the little sunflower was in little splinters. Just 24 hours after I'd been riding upside down in it. Let me tell you, I was off of airplanes from then on.
Gosh.
And
I got some notes here. I want to see what else I was going to ask you. I think I've asked you everything I was going to. Yeah. Well, something else I did here not long ago. I went down to Crane, and they have the senior housing down there, and I visited with Fern Young.
Oh.
Who had married Doc Young.
Oh, yeah.
Was his nurse.
Yeah, whatever happened to the man who used to write, to be in charge of the Crane Chronicle?
I don't know. I've probably heard, but I don't remember.
He was a very nice man. He went down to New Mexico, and then but he came back. His first wife wound up in the asylum, and then he married again, and I stopped in to see him. It was after I was out of the paper, and we were in Crane, and I went over, and he married again and had a small town. He was an awfully nice man. Did
you ever go on advance with his collecting, when he was out collecting any of his songs or his stories or anything?
Oh, no, he sent me. Man was always sickly.
Yeah, he used that a lot, didn't he?
And so I had to go and get him. You know, he had this job, and he...
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Sit down. He had this job, and he was supposed to be head of that folklore thing. But he was sick. He was Vance wasn't well. Of course, he'd been an alcoholic in the early part of his years, but he had all sorts of things wrong with him. And so he was in bed in the hotel. I had to go and do the things he's doing. And he wanted the names of all the people that all the people who were performing there at the folklore things and so on. But Zip Greenhall had made him do it. He got him because he meant to write them up papers. And I said, Vance, well, yes, you do him that.
No, his wife. And Honor is one of his 2 daughters. And they're good friends of ours, so I've always
anyway,
heard a lot about Doc.
He was a little about he had someone who was quite Easter, and I got the stuff for him. And I remember fastened to the bed, and he'd pull it when it began to knock him out, why his hand would come loose, and the rubber band would go back up. I had messed them all up, and I said, well, there was no point in my doing anything with them, and I did not mess them up. They were messed up when I got into them. But I wrote a letter to his mother every day for him, and that apparently was, he just thought he'd better give me something to do since I was there, and I was getting pretty bored with it too, and so she began to worry about, she'd never heard from him but once a week, at least at the most before, and so she sent some people over to see what was wrong with him, and I think really what was chiefly wrong with him was he had this job and he'd intended to get paid for it, and he intended to get all the folklore they got from it, but he didn't intend to do any work.
Yeah.
And so
was this the Writers Project?
Yeah, you remember they had a WPA.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And Zip Greenhall was in on it, and Zip Greenhall removed an awful lot just to use the backs of the sheets to put his names of people something about an election coming up. And in fact, all of the stuff, practically everything disappeared from it. And there was a woman that Vance had to smitten with, this Charleston woman from Charleston, Mrs. Parker.
Yeah,
and
she was a Pendergrass person, I think, wasn't she, or something?
Huh?
She was in politics, wasn't she, also?
Well, a little bit, yeah.
And she had connections, I mean. So,
and she came out, and she was the one who got Vance a job. They were rather smitten with each other, I think. And, but I forgot now what I started thinking about. But anyway, I was always fearful that something would happen, and he wouldn't be able to let loose of the little bottle that he had with him. And then, by golly, I went down one morning, and I heard music coming from the room. And there was a woman who had come in to go around and record hillbilly music. And Vance was up and dressed, and there they were playing his photograph. There was a guy who hadn't been able to hardly lift a hand for 2 weeks, and I'd been going down there and taking care of him, getting his
I don't know how many of these letters I have, and how many times verbally he said, well, it's all yours now. I'm through. The end is near. This was 5 years before it really was near.
Yeah.
And then what I'd do, though, is I'd round him up a bunch of books, and boy, all of a sudden, there wasn't any more talk of that because he had something to do then, and everything.
But when they wrote his biography, a friend of his was mad because he said, look at the Middle East, and he was buried in my pants. He'd been in the hospital there for ages, and he didn't have any clothes except pajamas.
Yeah.
And so this friend gave him his pants, and he was buried in his pants. And he said that never even mentioned me in the autobiography.
Yeah. Well, see, I never saw Vance out of the rest of them. Now, I saw him dressed maybe twice in a wheelchair, waiting for the ambulance or something to pick him up to take him to the doctor. But other than that, he was always in bed. I saw him setting up a few times, but he was always in his pajamas.
We were down there.
He was always in his pajamas.
When Nancy was born, I said, well, you could be her god uncle. So he gave her sent her a year's subscription to the New Yorker for that when I reminded him of it. But I don't know, he could do you a favor, or he could, on the other hand, cash in.
So you remember when they had the banquet for the festival, when they were already going to the National Folk Festival in St. Louis.
Yeah.
They had a banquet here, and there was a big to-do about it because John T. Woodruff got up and really read them the riot act. He said, "Now I don't want you all going up there and I think he said, don't want any rough stuff from you. Don't want them to think we're like those folks in Arkansas." Of course, there were people from Arkansas in the audience. So this was at that banquet at the Kentwood, and then he talked about that Thames Williamson's book, The Woods Colt.
Yeah.
About how he didn't mention, I don't think my name, but he mentioned something about that's giving us a bad name and all that, and here we have all our good highways and our progressive town, the Chamber of Commerce stuff,
Yeah, Vance was involved in that Woods Colt.
Yeah, he did a lot of that, didn't he?
Yeah, he did a lot of it.
And then
claimed
a whole
he
bunch
did
of
all,
but the next day,
if he gave so much as a sentence to it, he claimed he did all of mine. Half of it. that he wrote about half of mine. I said, you never wrote a line in it. If you did, I took it out.
Yeah.
Because as somebody said, as one of my publishers, Jim Henley, said, you're a better writer than he is. So keep it up.
Well, then Lucille Morris Upton wrote a good article the next day defending him. Well, he always liked her for that. Well, then I found this. Then when I was down there one time, he had some extra copies of that first bibliography, Volume 1, a paperback that came out from Indiana, University of Indiana. So I said, well, we were talking about Lucille and everything, and I said, I've mentioned you to her a few times, and she asked about you and all that. And he said, well, I didn't have a copy of the book, but I had him write best to you and not remembering all this and everything. And then I took it home and pasted it.
I don't think I ever saw an autobiography of Vance's put out with the University.
No, bibliography.
What
did I say? We were talking about it. I said bibliography. Anyway, and she said, well, I haven't talked to him for a while, she said, for quite a few years. What he did, she told me, she had her folk song column.
Yeah.
Where people would send in from 34 to 35, something like that. Well, then when he got to working on the folk songs, he asked her sometime, could I use a few of yours to fill in some variants of ones I collected? A few. And she said, well, I'm not really supposed to, because these people send them to me. Don't you dare use their names. I'll let you have a few, but it has to be absolutely
Vance was one of the worst spoiled people I ever knew.
He used their names right there, published in the book. Just she had a fit over it. So that's what this was kind of peacemaking with her over that. That's years ago, but he just upped and used them and used the names and everything, and she had a fit about it.
I could see her point, because he would send these in my books, tell him that put his name on first. And he wouldn't have, and I would write him and take that off, because after he did the first one, I said he never wrote a word of it. But I don't know, and he seemed to think that was just fine, that he was helping along people. Well, he was spoiled terribly by his mother.
Yeah, well, I got that idea from what I've read and everything.
And she also buffaloed him a little bit. Now, when he was sick there, he'd have me write a letter to his mother every day, and that turned out that was what caused her to send these couple of people over from Pittsburgh, because he was usually just wrote her once a week, and here was letters coming once a day. But he said to write it, and I wrote them, because after all, Doc Young had fixed up a little thing, a little bottle on a string, and it had something in it, chloroform, something, and he could sniff that when the pain got bad. And then when he'd kind of pass out, went to his hand, relax the bottle and go up. I was the one, of course, who had to go and get the done stuff for him. And
well, there's two things that got me. Of course, Max Hunter, first I knew where Vance was. I'd read Vance's books. My mother did start me reading when I was young, and so then, in the 40s, say in high school, I'd read maybe, but not mainly because she said, why don't you read it, but Down in the Holler was the first one I really got me interested in him. And so,
well, before that, he wrote an awful lot for Haldeman Julius.
Oh yeah, I've got all those just about. I think I've got all that he wrote for Haldeman Julius. Under those 15 or something.
I wrote a whole batch of them too.
You have them too?
Oh no, I never kept any of them. But a lot of those that he claimed he wrote, I wrote too. And the peculiar thing, Nancy took a course in the SMS in I forgot what it was, but anyway, it was supposed to be Negro fiction.
Yeah.
And so each one of the students had to write a piece as a Negro would have written one. Well, the ex-Haldeman Julius writer, this was not suit for me, so I wrote one. And the whole rest of the class, he read it aloud to the class. He said, now this is what I want. And he says, I know that this woman never knew a prostitute, and she was, this girl never knew a prostitute, and she never took a drink, and she was never in one of these crowds. But yet she could imagine it and write about it. And the rest of them ran in the house because she got the only A in the class. And it was the sort of thing I would have written for Haldeman Julius.
Well, what got me in with him? Well, first of all, first heard about where he was. Last I knew, he was in Eureka Springs, but I went to a talk Max Hunter gave at SMS, and he talked about him and that he was at Sunrise Manor in Fayetteville now, you know. And he said, but don't ever bother to go. He said he won't see but just a select few of us. Max always was that way. He really got kind of carried away with his, which is fine. What he did was wonderful, you know, but he'd always tell people, he's not going to talk to anybody except himself. And
who's that?
Max Hunter did.
Oh.
And he named 2 or 3 others. Well, one east,
my children were going. George Milburn?
Huh?
Did you ever know George Milburn?
I've had his books, but I never did know him.
I wonder if he's still alive.
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think so.
He bought Vance's old house down by
in Pineville?
I went down
Pineville or
down by Pineville.
Yeah.
And so I went down there, and the water had frozen up. So I thought it wouldn't work, and it was pretty. He had to explain that to all again. But George was very nice. His books, he read the dirty books, and so he was coming in from California, was going to stay on the train, was going to stop over here, so he came out south. And Mama, when he called, said, was it all right? Could he come out? And I said, well, sure, George, I'd love to see you. And Mama said, well, he talked like he does in the books. I said, oh, Mama, you'd think talking to him and he was talking to a small baby, he wouldn't use one single dirty word. In his conversation, he never did. In the books, yes. Yeah. But in the conversation, no.
Well, did you know Marie Wilbur? Did you know his wife?
I never met her. She wasn't there the time I was down the house. And he and Vance came here one time, and they took me out there, and then we went for a drive, and they'd been to Kansas City. And there was a tower up where the old railroad station was. They had built a soldier's tower, kind of like a silo.
Yeah.
And I said, every time we'd pass a silo, George would say, see, another soldier's monument. I like George. He was I had a acquaintance here. I forgot, I don't think, he's dead now, too. He had epilepsy finally, got him. But he was celebrity conscious. He wanted to meet celebrities, no matter how he did it. So he wanted me to write a note of introduction to George Milburn. So I wrote, and I thought, well, he just kept that. So I wrote inside, George, this man is just nuts about celebrities, and you can say hello to him or not, depending on your mood. It's no favor to me. So he figured that that's probably what I was saying, so he wrote it tore it up. And so when he went to New York and wanted to see my publisher, Jim Henley, why, he didn't ask for an note of introduction, but I wrote Jim and I said, maybe some young guy with a fake Oxford accent come in, and he'll talk about I describe all the frequently obnoxious things, but I said, if he says he's a dear friend of mine, and I said that you would want to say to him, don't believe him. But Jim wrote me and said, after reading her letter, I couldn't hardly wait to meet the guy.
So was this the celebrity hunter or George Milburn?
He lived here in town.
He was the guy.
He died in the asylum.
Guy that wanted to meet George Milburn and wanted to meet celebrities.
He wanted to meet not George Milburn, but George Milburn. Yeah. I thought you said Miller.
Do you remember? Were you here when the festival? 1934 that was. Were you remember the festival when they had when I was talking about like John T. Woodruff read the riot act to him, you know, and everything. Do you remember Sarah Gertrude Knott? Did you see her? Yeah, she was she and let's see, Bascom Lamar Lunsford came here from North Carolina, and he had put on a bunch of festivals there that were real successful, and so this Knox woman had asked him to come and help them with theirs. Well, told me this. I don't know if Lucille Morris Upton told me this or what. I think it was. That
is Lucille dead?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. She had a hard life.
Yeah, she was
just as she had it nice, while then her husband up and died.
Yeah.
And of course the leader, I figured that they, after I think Bixby was pretty generous with these people. Well, I know he was generous with these people as compared with Jewel. He seemed to feel you ought to pay him for the favor of working for him. And every time the only way I could get a raise was to say, well, Mr. Jewel, I hate to leave. It's so interesting here, but my father's gotten me a job that will pay me $5 a week more. I couldn't go there much more than $5, but I could get that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, she was a good-looking woman, this Sarah Gertrude Knott, and evidently Lamar Lunsford got the hot spore, and so did Vance. And there was another, kind of like it was with Lillian, and but I understand that Lunsford got in better than he did, or something like that. Then in 1979, Art Galbraith, we were partners, we played at Wolf Trap in Washington, and she was there. She was an elderly, of course, quite elderly then, so I got to meet her then. She was still a nice-looking woman, still a striking woman. Oh, well, it was interesting times. They can't be repeated. I mean, the situation would never be the same.
And there's a peculiar thing. Have you noticed it? Back in the days when I was on the paper, there were celebrities popping in here every 5 minutes, and I interviewed dozens of people, but they don't. I think one thing is they come by planes, and the planes would go through like that. Yeah. And in the old days, they would come by planes. Now I went out to Sam Ware told me that what's his name, the guy with the Oklahoma band.
Will Rogers.
Will Rogers. He was going to come in. His wife and Sam's wife and Will Rogers had been born on adjoining ranches in Oklahoma. So I went out there and saw them, and there was frequently quite interesting people come in, and there'd be maybe a holdover of 30 minutes. So there was time for me to get out there and interview them. But now I whoosh back and forth.
Well, another thing that happens now, it's a little better than it used to be. But, of course, we don't have our own newspaper anymore. We're Gannett News Service is what we are. And they make a point of never leaving people here a long time. Notice how they turn over the editors and they turn over the reporters, send them somewhere else. So these people that come in don't know people that have really contributed to Springfield or the Ozarks or Greene County.
Well,
they can pass away and there's no story about them.
And they don't have the homey atmosphere.
That's right.
Now, Jack Dempsey came into our newsroom and shook hands with every one of us, including all myself and the society editor and everybody else. And a man who had just come back from Russia, and he and I had a lengthy discussion over whether it was moving. I had just finished reading a book by Princess Jade about the empire and the empress and the marble boat would sink. It was
I know what you mean.
About it was interesting. But we had all sorts of. The worst one that I had, though, was the guy who came in with a $125,000 car. And it was white with diamonds in the hubcaps. And so I was to have the privilege of riding in this. Well, we got in the car, and I got in the back seat. And they put on smoke glasses. I didn't have smoke glasses. I didn't even have a hat. And I took the whole drive with my eyes shut because the sun came down, and it was just like a blaze of fun. And that was the worst one I ever had. But then Nolan Bullock and I flipped a nickel to see who would interview Wallace Berry. And the loser had to do it. And when he came back, he said, well, it's lucky that I lost, because he said, you'd have slapped him and gone. He said, I never had such a dirty interview in my life as Wallace Berry. But we don't seem to have anything like that now.
No, I don't know.
The paper, it might as well be a Kansas City paper or a St. Louis
well,
paper.
That's what it is. It's USA Today, a lot of it, because they also have that. But like I say,
and in the old days, I was what they call district editor, and I had pay on Thursdays when the papers came out, little paper. I had a stack of about 25 country newspapers, and I went through them all. And if there was something I thought of interest, there was a woman, Phoebe somebody or other, over in Everton, and she wrote for the picked up for the little stuff for the Kansas City Star. And she wrote also for the Greenfield Vedette. And I mentioned her. She was a good one. I went over to see her one time, and she had the darndest oldest typewriter I have ever seen. It was out in the smokehouse. And she said, here is where I do my writing. And I thought, no wonder it has that unique flavor.
Would you know Marge Lyon?
Yeah, I did.
She came down here from Chicago, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Her books, I've got them and I've read them, but they're to me like somebody from Chicago writing about the Ozarks. They're fine, you know, but you know, you can just tell, and nowadays especially you can tell when it's somebody that hadn't lived there.
Yeah, that they don't know anything about that.
Well, they think they do, but it's just the way they approach it. It's just, it's not the same as we would write.
Well, now, Vance, he just saturated himself in the Ozarks, so when he writes about the Ozarks, he was writing about the Ozarks. Yeah. And, of course, I was born in the Ozarks.
Well, I was too. So.
And I've lived on 7 farms, and in 3, at least 3 towns that had less than 500 people in them, and you know, there's a certain charm to that. Although I wouldn't like to go back to it.
No, because the towns aren't like they once were now.
No, and it's inconvenient. Of course, the farms a lot of them are better because they.
Well, of course, they're going now. They're all corporate farms are taking over now, just like
we
little
had
businesses are gone.
We had a big one up there, and Dad and I hauled lumber from around Monaco Springs.
Yeah.
And we had one team with harness, and then and a wagon with brakes, and then we had a team of mules, and then just the running gears of a wagon. Dad said, which do you want to drive? Well, at the end of our farm, there was a big steep hill, and there was no brakes on that. There was a brake on wagon, but a brake on. But on the other hand, you know how a workhorse, they've got those great big flat feet, and if they try to go more than this way, they fall. I said, I'll take the mules, but I want a chain. I want 2 chains and chain the planks to the running gears of the wagon. I don't want any wagon on it. I'll sit on that. And I was wearing my overalls, and of course I had my hair cut like a boy's, and people go by, hi, Bub, they'd say it, I'd say hi. Well, I get up at the top of that hill. We had subscribed to something we were building. We had built, I think it was 4 chicken houses. And every one of them, something happened to them. And we presently left the farm, came to Springfield. Dad would like to have gone on. He was the restless type, but the rest of us said, no, we're sitting right here. We've had 7, let's see, I think we had lived in either 7 or 9 different places. And I was 15, 16. But anyway, I get up to the edge of this hill, I'd go to the mules. And the mules are sure-footed. And so it took them a quarter of a mile to stop galloping, but I was still there, and the mules were still there, and the lumber was still there. So, but people would go by, hi, Bub. I'd say hi.
Well, here, I don't want to wear you out.
Well, what I wrote about it in Farmer Brown, but after my agent drank the last book up, I thought, well, they said those things do have an agent. But he took 10,000 away from P.G. Wodehouse, so I was in good company. Yeah. And I don't know.
What have you written in? 5 hardbacks? I mean, 5 novels, either?
No, I've written. Let's see. Underclass, Girl Scout, and
Can't Be the Murders.
Can't Be the Murders, and then I wrote.
You did 19 articles you've written.
Yeah.
So you've written 3.
Well,
3 novels.
Yeah, 3 novels.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Well, let me.
I think I made enough out of it to pay for the paper.
Yeah. Here, you know what I did? I brought along my copy of, what have I got here? Camp on Wildcat Creek. Didn't you do part of that?
That's fancy.
You didn't do any of that?
No, that's fancy.
Okay, well, I didn't.
Well, wait a minute, let's see.
Yeah, that's
I
fancy.
see.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I can write like
go ahead,
that.
write anyway. Yeah, go ahead. You did that on that other book you did. Yeah. and then put the year 2000. That'll throw them off.
He always made us be like
Yeah.
that. I've autographed a lot of books for
You
him.
autographed, you know that the body material that somebody gave you, and then you gave it to me or sold it to me or something, but you autographed that with Vance's signature. That's gonna. I put a note in there though that was you showing how you can do it. I want you to do me a favor if you don't apply. I want you to take a picture of me with her. Can you do that? She's a celebrity, you know.
Yeah, you go right ahead.
No, I'll let you. I want you to take it.
You want me to take it?
Yeah.
I've never worked with camera much.
Oh, well, that doesn't make any difference. I'll take one of her, period, by herself. Then.
Well,
Or I'll take the one or two of you. Here,
Yeah.
you two just stand there. Then I want you to take one of them.
why don't we let me?
Right here with here, just stand right in here where the books are.
Oh, okay. And I
Roll.
wanted for photography.
Okay, that's fine.
Did you ever?
Yeah, I knew that. I've seen this stuff before.
Yeah.
Get over here with
You want me
me.
to go too?
Yeah.
Well, that's just enough.
Take both of you here and get that.
I've got a gift bag.
Well, I'm getting a gift.
Yeah.
Let me try one more here. Let me take one more. Now, you just stay there, Nancy, and let me, you go over and stand where I was, and you just look through there, and you push this big one.
The big one?
Yeah, and it'll go, and then it'll go off.
Then I'll look through.
You look through there, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I ain't gonna put my arm
I
in
have
there.
wished for other books, but not over mine that, you know.
All right, now,
Let's see.
the big button you push.
The big button for
Yeah,
it?
yeah. It's in a little more to your right there, probably.
I can't see what I'm doing.
Can you see through that little hole there?
Trying to, but I haven't got it yet.
There you are. There, let's see. Just hold it, move it up there and took a little bit more to the right there. Now just shoot it. That ought to about do it.
Okay. I think I hit it. I don't.
No, you didn't, huh? 'Cause
I
it'll
didn't
flash.
hit it. Okay.
Come in a little bit with your finger. In, towards the outside of the camera there.
Am I right
To
now?
your right, yeah. And that'll be the button there.
Okay. Am I far enough now?
And I see you can push down on it here.
Didn't get.
Okay, that's all right.
I've
There's
never.
the button right here.
Oh, yeah.
There.
Okay.
There. Now your finger's on it right there.
Okay, I'll hold her right
Yeah,
there.
now we'll try one more time. Okay, we'll try it one more time.
Tell me when you.
Down a little bit. Come down just a little bit with it. Over the camera. Now, I think you got us now. I think you got us.
Okay, I snapped her.
Now push her down more.
Okay.
I don't think it went.
You didn't?
Oh, no, we'll give it one more try here. Oh, well, we'll try again sometime.
I never did punch it enough.
I'm in
So you
this.
just,
I'm in this one.
which one?
This one.
That,
I'm in this one.
oh,
It's an anthology.
oh, yeah.
Let's see.
Let's see if it's working. I'm not sure it is working here.
Oh, yeah, here we are, mountain symbol.
Yeah, you may have got this. It might have gone all right.
Yeah.
Mountain Civil.
That's not me out there, so that's deep question. But,
What is the name of that book, Country?
it's, Midwestern.
Yeah.
And I've seen some more, but I don't know.
Well, I sure thank you for the time you've given me here. And
There you go, right there's your jacket.
yeah,
Yeah.
I tell you, the traffic in this town.
Oh, it's a mess.
Gosh, I got a car out there. Well, I'm extra cautious. I got a car out there that's got 15 miles on it. Just picked it up a few hours ago.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well,
So I'll be real
yeah, you'll be
careful for a
try
while.
to
You
be
know.
careful.
Let's see.
Some wild hair don't run into
Yeah.
you.
Oh, here's the. Are those the Alderman? I thought those were the Alderman jewels.
No,
Very treasures. I got that. got that.
Yeah,
There, Kate Bender, I've got it.
Now, that was a hall of interest. Now, Allison Hardy, that was
That was his
bad.
friend. That was his friend in
No,
Columbia,
that-
wasn't it? I mean, no, I mean, that was the name of a friend he had.
Well, that was,
Yeah. Did you know Church, that friend of his, that Church?
yeah.
I guess he had a lot of problems, didn't he?
And, well, yeah.
Drinking, I mean, did he really?
Well, the two of them got together.
Yeah.
And they sent me along to try to keep me from drinking. Well, how was I
How are you
gonna
gonna
do
stop?
it? And,
Well.
man, and they had known each other as children. And so he said that she came to him and she was going to write a book about every scandal in Mansfield. And there is a book called Hometown by Rose Wilder Lane.
Oh,
And I think that's the one that she
And all
had.
because she thought they ran over her dog on purpose?
Yeah.
Oh, well. They sure use her mother and her name now. They have all their festivals and all this kind of stuff.
Yes, but you know, her mother never wrote any of that stuff. She said her mother wrote it. Okay, what was Rose writing every morning? She got up early in the morning and she wrote like the Dickens. I went down there and met her, and I was down there again. She had, but the people in Mansfield, they said, well, she had queer people coming in, and they didn't much like her. She wanted to impress them because she had been poor and Noah Jeff had been poor, and but they both came up in the world and they stayed friends. But that was the only friend. But boy, in that she wrote a book called Hometown, and she told everyone that she was putting every scandal. I read the book. I didn't think it was very scandalous.
Doug Mankey's still alive. He's in. He's had. They had a stroke. They thought or something.
Oh.
And he's in living with his carekeeper now.
Oh, yeah.
Over at Taneyville. But he's 97 or 98 now, I think, something like that.
And,
well, listen, thanks again.
Okay,
And I'll be
well,
good to see you, Ron. It's been a while here.
Drop in sometime. Well,
Well,
after
I
all,
will.
there's a lot of other. We just got in an hour
I
talking.
know it. I know it. There's so much to talk about.
I wanted to show
And
you
I
my
tell you,
pictures.
Well, the thing is, I
wanted to show you my photographs.
That's all right, you're fine there. I can see it.
You
Let me
better
take.
turn- You better turn the light on so we
Oh, I can see him. Let me take a picture of him real quick here. I'll just take a picture right now.
Then I've got them here and here. And
Come on, go off. Oh, this thing.
She's got him.
Well, I tell you, this thing, it gets,
I hope I didn't mess it
no,
up.
oh, no, you didn't do anything. There's what I wanted to do. That's what I want. Here, just sit there now. It looks like it's working. Just sit there. Here, come here and stand here. Let's see if you can take one just sitting
Punch
there.
this button?
Yep, that's the button you punch. Can you get us both in here? There. There,
well,
Wayne.
that's right.
Yeah.
And I've gone back to having the keepsake cabinet.
I like those.
Too.
I like
And I've got one in here and one in the back. And there's,
Take a picture of all these books in here too. Catch those.
oh my God, yeah, these are books that I've never used. And let's see.
What are you looking for here?
Well, I recognize the guy on the top
Now,
shelf.
these were brought to me from, there's a Greek friend of Rollins.
Be careful here, don't.
Who sends us all sorts of Greek things.
Yeah.
And this Aphrodite, and he's got a Greek outfit that he can't get in. And I found that one, that's over the podium.
Yeah.
And then my collection.
Well, I tell you, you've licked the book though. Book is buying books by reviewing them. That's what Bill McNeil does down at Mountain View. He reviews. He's got the most tremendous library, but he reviews all these books. You know. And
Well, that's what way I
Yeah.
got them.
You sure
And
done a good
Nancy said, I keep saying Nancy, we have to get rid of some of them because.
What's your daughter's last name?
Huh?
Nancy
Shumate.
Shumate, yes.
Shumate.
Yeah,
Okay.
she was she's
teaches school, doesn't she?
No, she works for the state.
Oh, yeah, you told me that.
And
You told me that a while ago.
she's over, they moved them from the square.
She's
They
what
were
they
at the
call a
square.
hearing officer
And now she
for
works
these
at the.
people.
Oh,
Fine.
welfare.
Welfare.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's been with them for, years and years. They
Well-
want her to go to Jefferson City, but she doesn't like it.
See you all later now. I'm gonna go ahead and let you go ahead and eat supper here.